Document, Part 6. The Aurora Dawn had barely escaped the swarm of glowing creatures when another crisis struck. Deep within the Veil Nebula, the ship's systems began to falter under the relentless strain of navigating such a hostile environment. The experimental thrusters, retrofitted by Daniel Harper, groaned under the pressure of constant adjustments. Warning lights blinked incessantly across the control panels, and the hum of the engines grew uneven, like a heartbeat struggling to keep pace. Laura sat in the cockpit, her eyes glued to the navigation screen. The maps she had adapted from ancient sea charts were still guiding them, but even the best plans couldn't account for every twist the nebula threw their way. She noticed cracks forming in the overlay, a sign that the system was struggling to process real-time data alongside the static predictions of the maps. "We need to stabilize the sensors," she said urgently, turning to Ethan Myers, who was frantically typing commands into his console. "If we lose the readings, we'll be flying blind." Ethan nodded, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "I'm trying, but the interference is overwhelming. It's like the nebula doesn't want us here." Olivia Grant gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white, as she fought to keep the ship steady. The turbulence was growing worse, tossing the vessel like a leaf in a storm. "Hold on," she shouted as the Aurora Dawn lurched violently. Alarms blared, and the crew braced themselves against the walls as the ship shuddered. For a moment, it felt as though they were caught in the grip of an invisible hand, pulling them toward certain doom. Ryan Carter rushed onto the bridge, his face pale with concern. "What's happening?" he demanded, gripping the back of Olivia's chair for balance. "It's the engines," Daniel's voice crackled over the intercom. "The stress is too much, they're overheating. I can't keep them running at this rate." Megan Fuller appeared moments later, clutching a medical kit. "Everyone okay?" she asked, scanning the room for injuries. The crew nodded, though their expressions betrayed exhaustion and fear. Megan moved quickly, handing out hydration packs and checking pulse rates. "Stay calm," she urged. "Panic will only make things worse." Ryan turned to Laura. "Is there another route? Anything in the maps that could get us out of this?" Laura hesitated, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through the digital overlays. "There's a detour marked here," she said, pointing to a faint line on the map, "but it's risky. It takes us through a dense cluster of energy fields. One wrong move, and we'll be trapped." "We don't have a choice," Ryan said, firmly. "Take us there." Olivia adjusted the controls, steering the ship toward the indicated path. The journey was harrowing. The energy fields pulsed with unpredictable bursts of radiation, forcing Olivia to dodge and weave like a dancer avoiding flames. Laura called out directions based on the maps, her voice strained but steady. "Left now, right steady," she instructed, her eyes darting between the screen and the VIEWPORT. Daniel worked tirelessly in the engine room, his hands moving deftly over the overheating machinery. He rerouted power from non-essential systems to keep the thrusters operational, muttering curses under his breath as sparks flew from overloaded circuits. "Come on, hold together," he pleaded, slapping the console in frustration. The engine sputtered, but didn't fail, and Daniel let out a shaky sigh of relief. "We're still alive for now." As they navigated the treacherous passage, the crew faced yet another obstacle. A massive electromagnetic storm loomed ahead, its swirling mass blocking their intended route. On the navigation screen, the storm appeared as a pulsating red zone, radiating waves of interference that distorted sensor readings. Laura frowned, studying the map closely. "There's no clear way around this," she admitted reluctantly. "We'll have to go through it." Olivia turned to face her, disbelief written across her features. "Through it? Are you sure? That thing looks like it could tear us apart." "I know it's risky," Laura replied, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision. "But according to the maps, the storm follows a cyclical pattern. If we time our entry correctly, we might be able to ride the edges and minimize damage. Ryan stepped forward, addressing the group. It's our only option. Let's make it count. His confidence bolstered the crew's resolve, and they sprang into action. Ethan recalibrated the sensors to track the storm's movement, providing Olivia with real-time updates. Daniel prepped the engines for maximum responsiveness, knowing they'd need every ounce of power to survive the ordeal. Megan ensured medical supplies were ready, anticipating potential injuries from the intense turbulence. As they approached the storm, the air inside the ship grew tense. The crew gathered in the cockpit, united in purpose. Olivia took a deep breath, steadying herself before initiating the maneuver. "Here goes nothing," she said softly, pushing the controls forward. The Aurora Dawn surged into the storm, buffeted by violent gusts of energy that threatened to rip it apart. Alarms blared, warning lights flashed, and the ship shuddered violently as Olivia fought to maintain control. "Hold steady," Ryan shouted above the noise, gripping the back of Olivia's chair for support. Laura and Ethan monitored the screens, calling out adjustments as needed. "Slight left now, right steady," Ethan directed, his voice urgent but clear. Daniel's voice crackled over the intercom. "Engines are holding for now. Don't push them too hard." Megan braced herself against the wall, her eyes wide as she watched the chaos unfold. For several agonizing minutes, the crew battled the storm, their teamwork and determination shining through the turmoil. Finally, with one final burst of speed, Olivia guided the ship out of the storm's grasp, emerging on the other side battered but intact. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone stared at each other, stunned by what they had just endured. Then, slowly, smiles began to spread. "We did it," Laura whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "We actually did it." Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression filled with admiration. "You all did amazing. Every single one of you." Despite the victory, the crew knew they weren't out of danger yet. The Aurora Dawn had suffered significant wear and tear during the storm, and repairs were desperately needed. Daniel assessed the damage, shaking his head as he examined the scorched circuits and frayed wires. "This is bad," he muttered. "We've lost about 30% of our power capacity. If we don't fix it soon, we won't have enough juice to reach the exit." Ethan joined him in the engine room, rolling up his sleeves. Together, they worked around the clock, improvising solutions with whatever spare parts they could scavenge. Laura helped by analyzing the maps for shortcuts, hoping to reduce the distance they needed to travel. Meanwhile, Megan kept morale high, reminding everyone to rest and eat properly despite the urgency of the situation. Olivia remained in the cockpit, keeping watch for any signs of trouble. Her sharp eyes scanned the viewport, searching for anomalies or obstacles that might delay their progress further. Though exhausted, she refused to leave her post, knowing how crucial her role was in ensuring their survival. By the time the repairs were complete, the crew was running on fumes. Dark circles ringed their eyes, and their movements were sluggish from lack of sleep. Yet despite their fatigue, there was a sense of accomplishment in the air. They had faced some of the worst challenges the Veil Nebula could throw at demand. They had prevailed. Later that evening, the crew gathered in the mess hall for a quick meal. The atmosphere was subdued, but there was also a quiet pride in their shared achievement. Ryan stood at the head of the table, raising a cup of water in a makeshift toast. "To the Aurora Dawn," he said, his voice steady, "and to all of you, we've come so far, and we're not done yet. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The others raised their cups, murmuring agreement. Laura smiled faintly, feeling a surge of gratitude for the team around her. These people had become more than colleagues, they were family. Ethan cracked a joke about naming the storm after Daniel, earning tired laughs from the group. Even Megan managed a small smile, her usual seriousness softened by the camaraderie of the moment. As the meal ended, Ryan addressed the crew once more. We've proven that humanity can adapt and overcome anything if we work together. But the hardest part is still ahead. Stay focused, stay strong, and remember why we're here. This isn't just about beating the Valens, it's about showing ourselves what we're capable of." His words resonated deeply with the crew, reinforcing their determination to see the mission through to the end. They returned to their stations, ready to tackle whatever obstacles lay ahead. The Veil Nebula continued to test their limits, throwing curveballs at every turn. Yet with each challenge they overcame, their confidence grew stronger, and, as the Aurora Dawn pressed onward, navigating the unpredictable currents of the Veil Nebula, the crew carried with them not only the hopes of humanity, but also the legacy of those who had dared to explore before them. Each twist and turn reminded them that true progress came not from rejecting tradition, but from building upon it. With every mile they traveled, they honored the spirit of exploration that had driven humanity since the dawn of time. The adventure was far from over, but for now, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet satisfaction. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. Whatever came next, they were ready. Document Part 5. As the Aurora Dawn pressed deeper into the Veil Nebula, the crew began to notice strange structures floating in the void. These formations resembled coral reefs, their delicate shapes glowing faintly with bioluminescent light. The sight was both eerie and beautiful, like something from a dream. Laura stared at them through the viewport, her eyes wide with wonder. "What are they?" she whispered, leaning closer to get a better look. Ethan adjusted the sensors, trying to gather more data. "They're not natural," he said after a moment. "These structures have patterns that suggest they were built by someone or something." Ryan stepped forward, his brow furrowed in thought. Could they belong to the Valens? Or maybe another alien species we haven't encountered yet? Laura shook her head slowly. "I don't think so. The architecture is too different from anything I've seen in Valen designs. It's almost organic, like they grew instead of being constructed." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had entered uncharted territory, not just in space, but in history. These structures hinted at civilizations long gone, their stories lost to time. Olivia kept the ship steady as they drifted closer, careful not to disturb the fragile-looking formations. "Should we investigate?" she asked, glancing back at Ryan. Ryan hesitated. Exploring unknown ruins could provide valuable insights, but it also carried risks. If the structures were unstable or guarded, it might jeopardize the mission. On the other hand, ignoring them felt wrong. This was a chance to uncover secrets about the nebula and its past. "We'll send a drone," he decided finally. "Let's see what it finds before we commit to anything." Ethan quickly prepared one of the exploration drones, programming it to scan the structures for signs of life or technology. As the small device zipped out of the ship and approached the nearest formation, the crew gathered around the monitor to watch its feed. The images revealed intricate details, lattice-like frameworks interwoven with glowing filaments, pulsating softly, as if alive. The drone detected traces of energy emanating from within, though its source remained unclear. "It's incredible," Laura murmured, her voice filled with awe. "These could be relics of an ancient civilization. Imagine what we might learn from them." But before they could analyze further, the drone's camera captured movement nearby. A swarm of jellyfish-like creatures emerged from behind the structures, their translucent bodies shimmering with iridescent colors. Each creature floated gracefully, trailing long tendrils that glowed faintly in the dim light. They surrounded the drone, curious but non-aggressive, their movements synchronized as if guided by some unseen force. "Are they intelligent?" Megan asked, her medical training kicking in as she considered potential threats. "Or are they just animals?" "I'm not sure," Ethan replied, zooming in on the creatures. "They don't seem hostile, but they're definitely affecting our sensors. Look, the readings are all over the place." Indeed, the presence of the creatures disrupted the ship's systems, causing minor malfunctions across the board. Warning lights blinked sporadically, and communication channels crackled with static. Daniel rushed to the engine room to stabilize the thrusters, which had begun fluctuating unpredictably. Whatever these things are, they're messing with our equipment, he reported grimly. I'll try to isolate the interference, but it's spreading fast. Ryan turned to Olivia. Can you keep us clear of them? Olivia nodded, her hand steady on the controls. She carefully maneuvered the Aurora Dawn away from the swarm, avoiding sudden movements that might provoke the creatures. Hold tight, she warned the crew. This might get bumpy. The jellyfish-like beings followed the ship, their numbers growing as more appeared from the shadows of the structures. Their glowing tendrils brushed against the hull, sending faint vibrations through the vessel. Though they showed no signs of aggression, their sheer presence was unsettling. Laura watched them nervously, clutching the edge of her seat. Do you think they're protecting the ruins? She wondered aloud. It's possible, Ryan replied. If these structures belong to an ancient civilization, these creatures might serve as guardians. We need to tread carefully. Despite Olivia's skillful piloting, the swarm continued to encircle the ship, making navigation increasingly difficult. Laura consulted her maps, searching for a way to break free without causing harm. There's a narrow passage marked here, she said, pointing to a section of the chart. It leads away from the structures. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them. Worth a shot, Olivia agreed, adjusting course accordingly. She guided the Aurora Dawn toward the indicated route, weaving between the glowing creatures. With precision, the crew held their breath as the ship slipped through the swarm, narrowly avoiding collisions. For a moment, it seemed like they would escape unscathed. Then, without warning, one of the larger creatures drifted directly into their path. Its body expanded suddenly, blocking the ship's progress. Alarms blared as Olivia slammed on the brakes, bringing the vessel to a halt mere meters away from the creature. What do we do now? She demanded, her voice tense. Ryan stepped forward, his mind racing. Aggression wasn't an option. They couldn't risk harming the creatures or damaging the ruins. But staying put wasn't viable either. The longer they lingered, the greater the strain on their systems. Laura, he said urgently, is there any mention of how sailors dealt with blockades in your maps? Any techniques we can use? Laura flipped through her notes frantically, her fingers trembling as she searched for answers. Finally, she found something. Wait, there's a technique called flow steering. Sailors used wind currents to guide ships around obstacles, without direct confrontation. Maybe we can adapt it here. What does that mean for us? Olivia asked, already anticipating the plan. It means we let the creatures dictate our movement, Laura explained. Instead of fighting them, we follow their flow, use their energy to guide us out. Olivia nodded, understanding immediately. She eased the controls, allowing the ship to drift gently alongside the creature's movements. Slowly but surely, the Aurora Dawn began to slip past the swarm, blending into their rhythm. The crew worked together seamlessly, with Ethan monitoring sensor readings and Daniel keeping the engine stable despite the interference. Megan stayed close by, ready to assist if anyone needed medical attention. After what felt like hours, the ship finally broke free of the swarm, emerging into open space once again. The crew exhaled collectively, relief washing over them. That was insane, Ethan muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. I thought we were done for. We made it because we worked as a team, Ryan said firmly, and because we trusted the wisdom of those who came before us. He glanced at Laura, gratitude shining in his eyes. Nice call with the flow. Steering. That was brilliant. Laura managed a weak smile, still shaken from the encounter. Let's hope we don't run into anything else like that. For the next few hours, the crew focused on repairing the damage caused by the creatures. Daniel worked tirelessly in the engine room, recalibrating systems and reinforcing connections weakened by the interference. Ethan analyzed the drone footage, hoping to learn more about the mysterious beings and the structures they guarded. Meanwhile, Megan checked everyone's vitals, ensuring the stress hadn't taken too great a toll as night fell aboard the ship. The crew gathered in the observation deck to reflect on the day's events. Outside the windows, the Veil Nebula stretched endlessly, its swirling colors casting a soft glow across the room. Despite the dangers they faced, there was a sense of awe in the air, a reminder of why they had embarked on this journey in the first place. These ruins, these creatures, Laura began, her voice tinged with wonder. They remind me of Earth's oceans. So much mystery, so much beauty waiting to be discovered. And danger, Olivia added wryly, earning chuckles from the group. But yeah, I get what you mean. It's humbling, isn't it? Knowing there's so much out there we don't understand. Ryan nodded, gazing out at the stars. That's why we explore. To push boundaries, to ask questions, to find answers, even when it scares us. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, easing the tension that had built up throughout the day. Ethan shared funny anecdotes from previous missions, while Daniel joked about naming the creatures after famous historical figures. Megan chimed in with stories of her own adventures, drawing laughter from the group. By the time they retired to their quarters, the weight of the day's challenges had lifted slightly. Yet, as Laura lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts returned to the ruins and the creatures guarding them. Who or what had built those structures? What secrets did they hold? And why had the jellyfish-like beings reacted so strongly to their presence? Questions swirled in her mind, keeping her awake long into the night. Meanwhile, Ryan stood alone, on the bridge, watching the nebula swirl outside. He thought about the risks they had taken, and the bonds they had formed. This mission wasn't just about proving humanity's worth to the Valencit, was about proving something to themselves. They had faced the unknown and survived, relying on teamwork, ingenuity, and courage. And as the Aurora Dawn sailed onward, navigating the unpredictable currents of the Veil Nebula, Ryan knew they were writing a new chapter in the story of chapter that honored the past, while reaching boldly toward the future. Whatever lay ahead, they were ready. Document Part 4. The deeper the Aurora Dawn ventured into the Veil Nebula, the more unpredictable its environment became. Swirling clouds of ionized gas danced around the ship like living creatures, their vibrant colors shifting from fiery reds to icy blues in an endless kaleidoscope. Gravitational anomalies pulled at the vessel, making it feel as though invisible hands were tugging it in every direction. The crew worked tirelessly to maintain control, relying on Laura's maps and Olivia's instincts to guide them through the chaos. Olivia sat in the cockpit, her fingers gripping the controls with practiced precision. Her eyes darted between the navigation screen and the viewport, where the nebula's swirling beauty masked its deadly dangers. The interface displayed a glowing overlay of the route based on Laura's adapted maps. But even with the best planning, unexpected obstacles kept appearing. A sudden gust of cosmic wind sent the ship lurching sideways, forcing Olivia to adjust quickly. She exhaled sharply, her heart racing as she stabilized the vessel. "This place doesn't play fair," she muttered under her breath. Ryan stood behind her, watching intently. He admired her calm demeanor, despite the constant challenges. "You're doing great," he said, his voice steady. "Keep trusting the maps, they've gotten us this far." Laura sat nearby, monitoring the map projections alongside Ethan. They had divided the charts into sections, each corresponding two different zones within the nebula. As they crossed into a new area, Laura studied the symbols carefully, comparing them to real-time data streaming in from the ship's sensors. "We're approaching a region with high gravitational activity," she warned. "There's a narrow passage marked here, but it's going to be tight." Ethan nodded, adjusting the holographic display to zoom in on the designated route. "If we stick to this path, we should avoid the worst of it. But one wrong move could send us straight into an anomaly." Olivia acknowledged their input with a quick glance over her shoulder. Got it. Tight passage. High gravity sounds like fun. Her tone was light, but her focus never wavered. Slowly, she guided the Aurora Dawn toward the indicated route, weaving between dense clusters of energy fields that shimmered ominously in the distance. Daniel Harper remained glued to the engine room monitor, keeping a close eye on the retrofitted thrusters. The experimental system had performed admirably so far, mimicking the fluid movements described in the ancient sea maps. However, the strain of navigating such turbulent conditions was beginning to show. Warning lights flickered intermittently, signaling minor fluctuations in power output. Daniel cursed under his breath as he adjusted settings, trying to compensate for the stress. "Come on, hold together," he murmured, patting the console reassuringly. Despite the pressure, he refused to let anxiety get the better of him. The crew was counting on him to keep the ship running smoothly, and failure wasn't an option. Meanwhile, Megan Fuller checked in with the team regularly, ensuring everyone stayed physically and mentally sharp. She distributed nutrient-rich meals and hydration packs, reminding them to take breaks whenever possible. Stress was mounting, and she knew fatigue could lead to mistakes. "Stay alert," she urged during one of her rounds. "We're not just fighting the nebula, we're fighting exhaustion too." Despite the growing tension, there were moments of triumph that lifted spirits. When the crew successfully navigated a particularly dangerous stretch of turbulence without incident, cheers erupted throughout the ship. Ethan pumped his fist in excitement, while Laura allowed herself a rare smile. Even Ryan cracked a grin, clapping Olivia on the back. "That was incredible," he said, his pride evident. "You made it look easy." But the relief was short-lived. As they pushed further into the nebula, the challenges intensified. A massive electromagnetic storm loomed ahead, its swirling mass blocking their intended route. On the navigation screen, the storm appeared as a pulsating red zone, radiating waves of interference that distorted sensor readings. Laura frowned, studying the map closely. "There's no clear way around this," she admitted reluctantly. "We'll have to go through it." Olivia turned to face her, disbelief written across her features. "Through it? Are you sure? That thing looks like it could tear us apart." "I know it's risky," Laura replied, her voice steady, despite the weight of the decision. "But according to the maps, the storm follows a cyclical pattern. If we time our entry correctly, we might be able to ride the edges and minimize damage." Ryan stepped forward, addressing the group. "It's our only option. Let's make it count." His confidence bolstered the crew's resolve, and they sprang into action. Ethan recalibrated the sensors to track the storm's movement, providing Olivia with real-time updates. Daniel prepped the engines for maximum responsiveness, knowing they'd need every ounce of power to survive the ordeal. Megan ensured medical supplies were ready, anticipating potential injuries from the intense turbulence. As they approached the storm, the air inside the ship grew tense. The crew gathered in the cockpit, united in purpose. Olivia took a deep breath, steadying herself before initiating the maneuver. "Here goes nothing," she said softly, pushing the controls forward. The Aurora Dawn surged into the storm, buffeted by violent gusts of energy that threatened to rip it apart. Alarms blared, warning lights flashed, and the ship shuddered violently as Olivia fought to maintain control. "Hold steady," Ryan shouted above the noise, gripping the back of Olivia's chair for support. Laura and Ethan monitored the screens, calling out adjustments as needed. "Slight left now, right steady," Ethan directed, his voice urgent but clear. Daniel's voice crackled over the intercom. "Engines are holding for now. Don't push them too hard." Megan braced herself against the wall, her eyes wide as she watched the chaos unfold. For several agonizing minutes, the crew battled the storm, their teamwork and determination shining through the turmoil. Finally, with one final burst of speed, Olivia guided the ship out of the storm's grasp, emerging on the other side battered. but intact. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone stared at each other, stunned by what they had just endured. Then, slowly, smiles began to spread. "We did it," Laura whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "We actually did." Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression filled with admiration. "You all did amazing. Every single one of you." Though shaken, the crew celebrated their victory briefly before turning their attention back to the mission. They couldn't afford to lose focus, not when they still had so much ground to cover. As they regrouped, Olivia reflected on how far they had come since leaving Earth. At first, she had doubted the feasibility of using ancient maps to navigate such a hostile environment. Now, however, she understood their value. These weren't just relics of the past, they were tools that combined human ingenuity with timeless wisdom. Later that evening, the crew gathered in the mess hall for a quick meal. Exhaustion was etched into their faces, but there was also a sense of camaraderie that hadn't been there before. They joked about the storm, recalling moments of near disaster with laughter instead of fear. Ethan teased Olivia about her death-defying stunts, earning groans from the others. Even Daniel joined in, sharing stories of engine mishaps from previous missions. Laura sat quietly, observing the interactions with a grateful smile. This journey had brought them closer together, forging bonds that would last a lifetime. She glanced at Ryan, who was listening intently to Olivia recount the storm sequence. His leadership had been instrumental in keeping the team focused and motivated. Without him, they might not have made it this far. As the meal ended, Ryan addressed the group once more. "We've faced some tough challenges already, but the hardest part is still ahead. Keep your heads up, stay sharp, and remember why we're here. We're not just proving ourselves to the Valens, we're proving something to ourselves. Humanity can adapt, innovate, and overcome anything if we work together." His words resonated deeply with the crew, reinforcing their determination to see the mission through to the end. They returned to their stations, ready to tackle whatever obstacles lay ahead. The Veil Nebula continued to test their limits, throwing curveballs at every turn. Yet with each challenge they overcame, their confidence grew stronger. By the time they reached the halfway point of their journey, the Aurora Dawn had proven itself capable of surviving the nebula's wrath. Its hull bore new scars from close encounters with energy fields, and its systems showed signs of wear and tear. But the ship and its crew remained steadfast. Together, they had transformed an impossible task into a testament to human resilience, and, as they pressed onward, navigating the unpredictable currents of the Veil Nebula, they carried with them not only the hopes of humanity, but also the legacy of those who had dared to explore before them. Each twist and turn reminded them that true progress came not from rejecting tradition but from building upon it. With every mile they traveled, they honored the spirit of exploration that had driven humanity since the dawn of time. The adventure was far from over, but for now, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet satisfaction. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. Whatever came next, they were ready. Document Part 3. The morning of the launch arrived with a mix of anticipation and nerves. The crew of the Aurora Dawn gathered in the briefing room one last time before departure. Captain Ryan Carter stood at the front, his expression calm but firm as he addressed the team. "Today is the day we prove that humanity can rise to any challenge," he began, his voice steady. "We've trained hard, prepared thoroughly, and trusted in each other's skills. Now it's time to put all of that into action." Laura Bennett sat near the back, clutching a folder filled with her adapted maps. She had spent countless hours refining them, ensuring every detail was accurate. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of responsibility weighing on her shoulders. If her theories were wrong, the mission would fail and the consequences for Earth would be dire. Ethan Myers noticed her anxiety and gave her a reassuring smile. "You've done everything you can," he whispered. "Trust your work." Olivia Grant, seated beside Laura, leaned forward eagerly. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, taking in the faces of her fellow crewmates. Each person brought something unique to the table, and Olivia knew their success depended on how well they worked together. "Let's focus on what we can control," she said aloud, breaking the silence. "We have the tools, the knowledge, and the determination. That's all we need." Ryan nodded in agreement. "Exactly. We're not just flying a ship, we're carrying the hopes of billions of people. Let's make them proud." With that, he dismissed the group, sending everyone to their stations for final checks. As the crew dispersed, Daniel Harper headed straight for the engine room. He moved with practiced efficiency, inspecting the retrofitted thrusters one last time. His fingers traced the intricate network of pipes and circuits, ensuring every connection was secure. "You're ready?" he muttered to himself, patting the side of the engine affectionately. Though confident in his work, Daniel couldn't help but feel a twinge of doubt. What if something went wrong during the journey? He shook off the thought, reminding himself that overthinking wouldn't help anyone. Dr. Megan Fuller, meanwhile, made her way to the medical bay. She double-checked the supplies, organizing medications and equipment neatly on shelves. Her mind wandered to the potential dangers they might face: radiation exposure, injuries from turbulence, or even psychological strain. She pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the importance of staying prepared. "Whatever happens," she murmured, "we'll handle it." Back in the cockpit, Olivia ran through pre-flight protocols, testing the navigation system linked to Laura's maps. The interface displayed a glowing overlay of the Veil Nebula, with safe routes highlighted based on the ancient charts. It felt surreal to see centuries-old wisdom translated into modern technology, but Olivia trusted the process. She adjusted settings, fine-tuning the controls until everything was perfect. When Ryan joined her, she turned with a grin. "All set," she said confidently. "Just say the word, and we're off." Ryan returned her smile, though his eyes betrayed a hint of tension. "Good. Let's get this show on the road." He contacted ground control, confirming clearance for launch. Outside, technicians scurried around the ship, performing final inspections. The hum of activity filled the air, blending with the distant sound of waves crashing against the underwater dome above. At exactly 0800 hours, the countdown began. The crew strapped into their seats, hearts pounding as the engines roared to life. Vibrations rippled through the hull, growing stronger with each passing second. Laura gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white. Ethan patted her shoulder, encouragingly. "We've got this," he said softly. When the countdown reached 0, the Aurora Dawn shot upward, breaking free from the ocean's surface with a thunderous roar. For a moment, sunlight poured through the windows, blindingly bright after weeks spent beneath the waves. Then, as the ship ascended higher, the blue sky faded into the vast blackness of space. The crew stared out in awe, marveling at the endless expanse of stars stretching before them. Once they were safely en route to the Veil Nebula, Ryan called a meeting in the main cabin. "All right, team," he said, addressing everyone. "This is it. From here on out, we rely on each other and on these maps to guide us. No shortcuts, no cutting corners. We stick to the plan." Laura stood up, holding her folder tightly. "I want to remind everyone that these maps are more than just guides. They're predictions based on patterns we've observed. They won't account for every variable, so we'll need to stay flexible. Trust your instincts, and don't hesitate to speak up if something doesn't feel right." Ethan chimed in, pointing to a holographic display showing the nebula's layout. "We've marked areas where gravitational anomalies are strongest. Those will be our biggest challenges, but the maps suggest there are natural pathways we can use to avoid them. Stick to those routes, and we should be okay." Olivia nodded, adding, "And remember, I'm not just flying blind. This ship has been modified to respond like a boat in water, so I can adjust course quickly if needed. Just keep me updated on any changes, and we'll stay ahead of trouble." Daniel raised a hand, drawing attention to the engine status panel. The thrusters are holding steady, but if anything feels off, let me know immediately. I'll be monitoring them constantly. Megan finished the discussion by emphasizing the importance of teamwork. We're all in this together. Watch out for each other, communicate clearly, and take care of yourselves. Stress weakens us faster than anything else. With the briefing complete, the crew returned to their tasks, settling into their roles. Over the next several days, they traveled toward the Veil Nebula, using the time to bond and build trust. Meals became opportunities for laughter and storytelling, easing some of the tension that had built up. Laura shared tales of famous explorers who had braved unknown seas, while Ethan talked about his love for tinkering with machines. Even Daniel opened up about his childhood fascination with spaceships, earning smiles from the group. One evening, as the nebula loomed closer on the horizon, Olivia invited everyone to the observation deck. The swirling colors of the Veil Nebula filled the viewport, casting an ethereal glow across the room. Reds, purples, and blues danced together, creating a mesmerizing spectacle. "Hard to believe we're about to go in there," Ethan said quietly, his voice filled with wonder. "It's beautiful," Laura replied, her earlier doubts temporarily forgotten. "But beauty can be dangerous too. That's why we need to stay sharp." Ryan nodded, his gaze fixed on the nebula. "Tomorrow, we enter. Get some rest tonight. We'll need all the energy we can muster." As the crew dispersed, each person retreated to their quarters, reflecting on the journey ahead. Laura lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision she'd made in preparing the maps. Had she missed something? Was there a flaw in her calculations? She forced herself to breathe deeply, reminding herself that second-guessing wouldn't help now. In another part of the ship, Olivia sat cross-legged on her bunk, reviewing the flight plan one last time. She visualized the path through the nebula, imagining how she would react to unexpected obstacles. Confidence replaced uncertainty as she reminded herself of her training and experience. Whatever came their way, she was ready. Down in the engine room, Daniel tinkered with minor adjustments. Unable to sleep, he listened to the rhythmic hum of the engines, finding comfort in their steady pulse. "You won't fail me," he whispered to the ship. Knowing it carried more than just machinery, it carried hope. Megan, meanwhile, checked on the crew's vitals remotely, ensuring everyone was coping well with the stress. Satisfied that they were physically and mentally prepared, she allowed herself a rare moment of optimism. Perhaps, she thought, they really could pull this off. By morning, the Aurora Dawn was positioned at the edge of the Veil Nebula. The crew gathered in the cockpit, silent but resolute. Ryan gave the order to proceed, and Olivia guided the ship into the swirling chaos. As they crossed the threshold, the vibrant colors enveloped them, obscuring the stars beyond. For a brief moment, it felt like entering another world entirely. The first few hours passed smoothly, thanks to Laura's maps and Olivia's skillful piloting. They navigated around dense clouds of ionized gas and avoided pockets of intense radiation. Daniel monitored the engines closely, reporting occasional fluctuations but nothing serious. Megan kept an eye on the crew's health, noting only mild signs of fatigue. But as they ventured deeper, the challenges grew more daunting. A sudden surge of electromagnetic interference disrupted communications, forcing Ethan to scramble for a solution. "I've rerouted the signal through auxiliary channels," he announced after several tense minutes. "We should be good for now." Despite the hiccup, morale remained high. The crew celebrated small victories along the way, cheering when they successfully dodged a particularly nasty anomaly or found a hidden passage through turbulent zones. Each success reinforced their belief that they could overcome whatever lay ahead. As the day wore on, Ryan took a moment to reflect on the journey so far. Looking around at his team, their determination, their resilience, he felt a deep sense of pride. They weren't just proving themselves to the Valens, they were proving something to themselves. Humanity wasn't defined by its limitations, but by its ability to adapt, innovate, and persevere. Document Part 2. Laura Bennett returned to her underwater lab with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. The challenge ahead was daunting, but it excited her in a way that pure academic research never had. She wasn't just studying history anymore, she was bringing it to life. Her small team consisted of Ethan Myers, her assistant, and a handful of volunteers who shared her passion for ancient navigation. Together, they began the painstaking process of decoding centuries-old sea maps and comparing them to the chaotic data gathered from the Veil Nebula. The lab buzzed with activity as Laura spread out dozens of maps across the central table. Some were faded parchment rolls, others printed replicas, but each one held clues about how sailors once navigated treacherous waters without modern instruments. Ethan stood nearby, his fingers flying over a holographic interface as he overlaid scanned versions of the maps onto Nebula scans. His enthusiasm matched Laura's, though his approach leaned more toward technology than tradition. "Look at this," Ethan said, pointing to a section of Magellan's map where swirling lines represented ocean currents. "These patterns are eerily similar to the energy flows we've mapped in the Veil Nebula. Could they really be using the same principles?" Laura nodded thoughtfully. "It makes sense when you think about it. Just like water currents, cosmic winds follow natural laws. If sailors could predict the movement of tides and storms, why can't we apply those same ideas here?" She grabbed a stylus and began marking key points on the digital overlay. "What if these symbols," she tapped a cluster of dots near the edge of the map, "represent gravitational anomalies? And these curves here," she traced a series of looping lines, "could show safe passages through turbulent zones." Ethan tilted his head, considering her theory. "If that's true, then we're not just adapting old maps. We're translating them into a completely new language." "That's exactly what we're doing," Laura replied with a grin. "But it's going to take time and a lot of trial and error to get it right." As the days turned into weeks, the team worked tirelessly. They tested their theories against simulated nebula conditions, running countless scenarios to see which combinations of ancient techniques and modern science yielded the best results. Laura often stayed late into the night, poring over every detail, unwilling to leave until she was certain they weren't missing anything. Ethan joked that she was turning into a mermaid, given how much time she spent submerged beneath the waves. But Laura didn't mind. This project mattered too much to let fatigue slow her down. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Carter assembled the crew who would attempt the impossible mission. He knew success depended not only on Laura's maps, but also on finding people capable of executing such a risky plan. After reviewing dozens of candidates, he settled on Lieutenant Olivia Grant, a fearless pilot known for her quick reflexes and unorthodox problem-solving skills. Olivia had earned a reputation for taking risks others wouldn't dare, and while some called her reckless, Ryan saw potential in her ability to adapt under pressure. When Ryan first approached Olivia about the mission, she raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Sea maps? Seriously?" she asked, leaning back in her chair. "You want me to fly a spaceship through a death trap using charts made by guys in wooden boats?" Ryan chuckled, despite himself. "Hear me out. These aren't ordinary maps. Dr. Bennett thinks they might hold the key to navigating the nebula safely. We need someone who can think outside the box, and that's you." Olivia crossed her arms, still unconvinced. "I'm not saying I don't believe in creativity, but this sounds like madness. What happens if your fancy maps turn out to be useless halfway through?" "Then we fail," Ryan admitted bluntly. "But failing isn't an option. If we don't try, the Valens will cut us off from trade routes we can't afford to lose. Besides," he added with a wry smile, "you'll have backup. Chief Engineer Daniel Harper is retrofitting the ship with experimental thrusters designed to mimic the fluid movements described in the maps." That caught Olivia's attention. "Experimental thrusters? Now you're talking my language." She leaned forward, intrigued. Tell me more. Daniel Harper, a wiry man with perpetually grease-stained hands, was already hard at work modifying the Aurora Dawn, an older exploration vessel, chosen for its durability. The ship wasn't glamorous. It lacked the sleek design and cutting-edge tech of newer models, but it had character. Its hull bore scars from past missions, each scratch a testament to its resilience. Daniel believed the ship's age gave it an advantage. It could handle rough conditions better than something built for speed or luxury. He spent long hours in the engine room, fine-tuning the thrusters to respond like rudders in water, by creating propulsion systems that mimicked the ebb and flow of ocean currents. He hoped to give Olivia greater control over the ship's movements within the nebula. It was a gamble, but Daniel thrived on challenges like this. Every time he solved a problem, he felt a surge of pride, knowing he was contributing to something bigger than himself. While Daniel worked on the engines, Medical Officer Dr. Megan Fuller prepared for the physical toll the mission would take on the crew. The Vale Nebula's volatile environment posed significant health risks, from radiation exposure to extreme stress. Megan, a compassionate woman with a nonsense attitude, ensured everyone underwent rigorous testing to assess their fitness for the journey. She also stocked the ship with advanced medical equipment and supplies, determined to keep everyone alive, no matter what happened. As launch day approached, tensions ran high among the team. Some members doubted whether relying on ancient maps was wise, while others worried about the dangers lurking inside the nebula. Despite these concerns, a sense of camaraderie began to form. Late-night conversations over cups of coffee helped ease anxieties, and shared meals fostered bonds that went beyond professional duties. Even Olivia, initially skeptical of the plan, found herself warming up to the idea as she learned more about the maps and the people behind them. One evening, as the group gathered in the lab to review final preparations, Laura took a moment to address everyone. Standing beside the table covered in maps and holograms, she spoke with quiet conviction. This mission isn't just about proving ourselves to the Valens. It's about showing that humanity hasn't forgotten its roots. For centuries, explorers braved unknown seas with nothing but courage and ingenuity. We're carrying on that legacy, blending old wisdom with new technology to achieve something extraordinary. Her words resonated deeply with the team. Ryan noticed the change in their demeanor. They seemed more focused, more united. Whatever doubts lingered were overshadowed by a collective determination to succeed. On the eve of departure, Ryan visited the dock where the Aurora Dawn waited, ready for its historic voyage. The ship gleamed under floodlights, its retrofitted engines humming softly as technicians performed last-minute checks. As he walked along the gangway, Ryan couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. This mission represented everything humanity had fought for since making contact with alien civilizations: respect, equality, and a place among the stars. Inside the ship, the crew bustled about, securing equipment and double-checking systems. Olivia sat in the cockpit, running simulations on the navigation interface designed around Laura's maps. Though outwardly calm, her mind raced with scenarios and contingencies. She trusted her instincts, but even the best pilot needed reliable tools to survive. Daniel emerged from the engine room, wiping sweat from his brow. "Everything's set," he announced. "The thrusters are calibrated, and the stabilizers are holding steady. Let's just hope all my tinkering pays off." Megan joined them, carrying a clipboard filled with notes. "Health checks are complete. Everyone's fit to go. Remember, stay hydrated and rest whenever you can. Stress is our biggest enemy out there." Ryan nodded appreciatively. "Thanks, everyone. Tomorrow, we make history, or at least try to. Get some sleep tonight. We'll need all the energy we can muster." As the crew dispersed to their quarters, Ryan lingered in the cockpit, staring at the blank screen displaying the nebula route. He thought about the stakes, the lives, depending on this mission. The future of Earth's alliances, and the weight of proving humanity's worth. But most of all, he thought about the spirit of exploration that had driven humans to reach for the stars in the first place. With a deep breath, he left the cockpit and headed to his cabin. Sleep came slowly, his mind replaying every detail of the plan. Yet as dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the ocean's surface above, Ryan felt a renewed sense of resolve. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. And so, with the echoes of ancient sailors guiding their path, the crew of the Aurora Dawn prepared to embark on a journey unlike any other. Journey that would test not only their skills, but their belief in the power of human ingenuity. Document. Part 1. In the year 2147, humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Decades of cautious diplomacy had led to fragile alliances with several alien civilizations. Among these were the Valens, an advanced aquatic species known for their sleek silver ships and towering intellect. The Valens lived in underwater cities on distant oceanic planets. Their bodies adapted to survive immense pressures and cold depths. Humans admired their technology, but found their attitude difficult to stomach. The Valens often acted as if they were superior to all other life forms, dismissing human accomplishments as primitive or lucky. Captain Ryan Carter stood on the observation deck of the orbital station Seraphim, gazing out at the vast expanse of stars beyond the glass. He was a tall man, with short brown hair and sharp blue eyes that always seemed to be searching for something. His uniform, adorned with medals earned over years of service, fit snugly against his broad shoulders. Today, however, he wasn't thinking about awards or accolades. Instead, his mind raced with worries about what might happen next. The Valens had called for this meeting, and Ryan knew it wouldn't be pleasant, for weeks now. Rumors had circulated among Earth's diplomatic corps that the Valens were growing impatient with humanity's slow progress in space exploration. They controlled key trade routes through hyperspace, and tensions were rising, as some factions within their government pushed to limit human access. If the Valens decided to cut off those routes, it could cripple Earth's economy and isolate humanity from its allies. Ryan turned when he heard footsteps behind him. Ambassador Lyrak entered the room, accompanied by 2 Valen guards. Like all members of his species, Lyrak had smooth, translucent skin that shimmered faintly under artificial light. His elongated head tapered into a pointed chin, and his large black eyes reflected the glow of the starfield outside. Despite his calm demeanor, there was an undeniable air of arrogance around him. "Captain Carter," Lyrak said, his voice low and melodic, though tinged with condescension. "I trust you've been informed of the purpose of our gathering today." Ryan nodded stiffly. "Yes, Ambassador. We're here to discuss the future of our cooperation." He kept his tone neutral, unwilling to show any sign of weakness. Lyrak stepped closer to the window, his gaze fixed on the swirling colors of a nearby nebula. "That is correct. However, I must say, your species continues to disappoint us. You claim to possess ingenuity, yet you rely heavily on borrowed knowledge and outdated methods. Your so-called achievements pale in comparison to ours." Ryan clenched his jaw but forced himself to remain calm. Diplomacy required patience, even when dealing with someone as infuriating as Lyrak. "We may not have centuries of interstellar experience like you do, Ambassador, but we're learning quickly. Humanity has made remarkable strides in a very short time." Lyrak let out a soft laugh, the sound almost musical. "Remarkable, perhaps by your standards. But tell me, Captain, what great feat has humanity accomplished recently that truly impresses? What challenge have you overcome without assistance?" Before Ryan could respond, Lyrak gestured toward the nebula visible through the window. Its vibrant hues shifted constantly, like an oil slick caught in sunlight. Take the Veil Nebula, for example. It is one of the most treacherous regions of space known to exist. Countless explorers have attempted to navigate its deadly currents, only to meet their doom. No one, not even the Valance, has succeeded in traversing it unscathed. He turned back to face Ryan, his expression smug. And yet, humans boast endlessly about their supposed mastery of navigation. Very well then. Let us put your claims to the test. If you can pilot a ship through the Veil Nebula and return safely within 3 months, we will acknowledge your skill. Fail, however, and Earth will lose access to the trade routes under our control. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. This was worse than he'd feared. The Veil Nebula was infamous for its unpredictable energy storms and gravitational anomalies. Ships that ventured too close often vanished without a trace, even equipped with state-of-the-art technology. Navigating such a place would be nearly impossible. You're asking us to risk lives for nothing more than a demonstration, Ryan asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. Lyrak shrugged dismissively. It is not my concern whether you choose to accept the challenge. But if you refuse, it will confirm what many already believe, that humanity lacks the courage and capability to stand among the stars. With that, Lyrak turned and left the room, his guards following silently behind him. Ryan stood frozen for a moment, staring at the spot where the ambassador had been. His mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. How could he possibly prepare a crew for such a mission? And where would they even begin? Later that evening, Ryan sat in his quarters aboard the Seraphim, scrolling through files on his tablet. He needed advice, and there was only one person he trusted enough to ask. Dr. Laura Bennett was a marine archaeologist who had spent years studying ancient navigation, techniques used by Earth's earliest seafarers. Her work often focused on how sailors once relied on natural phenomena, wind patterns, ocean currents, even the stars to guide their journeys across uncharted waters. Ryan sent her a secure message, explaining the situation and requesting an urgent meeting. Within minutes, she replied, agreeing to join him at her research lab near Miami. As he read her response, a small spark of hope ignited in his chest. If anyone could find a way to tackle this seemingly impossible task, it was Laura. 2 days later, Ryan arrived at Laura's facility, located beneath the waves just off the coast of Florida. The lab was housed inside a massive dome structure, accessible only by submarine. As he stepped out of the transport vehicle, he was greeted by Laura herself. She was a petite woman with curly red hair, tied back in a loose bun, and freckles scattered across her nose. Her green eyes sparkled with curiosity, and she wore a faded t-shirt emblazoned with the words, "History repeats itself." "Ryan," she said warmly, shaking his hand. "I've been expecting you. Come on in, I'll show you what I've been working on." Inside the lab, shelves lined the walls, filled with artifacts from Earth's maritime past. There were compasses, sextants, and weathered maps rolled up in protective tubes. At the center of the room stood a large table, covered in papers and digital displays showing data from recent space missions. Laura wasted no time getting to the point. "So, you want to navigate the Veil Nebula using old sea maps? It sounds crazy, but hear me out." She pulled one of the rolled-up maps from a shelf and carefully spread it across the table. "This is a chart created by Ferdinand Magellan's crew during their circumnavigation of the globe in the early 1500s. Notice how they mapped ocean currents and wind directions, using symbols and patterns." She tapped the map with her finger. "Now, compare that to the scans we've taken of the Veil Nebula. See any similarities?" Ryan leaned in, studying the images side by side. To his surprise, there were parallels. Both sets of data featured swirling patterns and directional flows, albeit on vastly different scales. Could it really be possible to adapt ancient navigation techniques for use in space? "I think so," Laura continued, reading his thoughts. "These maps weren't just random guesses. They were based on centuries of observation and trial. If we combine their insights with modern technology, maybe we can create a hybrid system that works." Ryan felt a flicker of optimism for the first time since meeting Lyrak. "Do you think we can pull it off in 3 months?" Laura hesitated, then gave him a determined smile. Let's find out. By the end of their discussion, Ryan had a clearer sense of direction. Laura agreed to lead the effort to decode and adapt the maps, enlisting the help of her assistant, Ethan Myers, a young engineer with a knack for problem-solving. Together, they began analyzing every detail, searching for clues that might unlock the secrets of the nebula. As Ryan prepared to leave the lab, Laura stopped him at the door. One last thing, she said seriously. If this works, it won't just be about proving ourselves to the Valens. It'll be about reminding everyone, including ourselves, that sometimes the answers lie not in looking forward, but in looking back. Ryan nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, he believed it might actually be possible, with Laura's expertise and humanity's resilience. Perhaps they could turn an ancient sailor's dream into a modern-day miracle. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of an adventure that would test everything they thought they knew about exploration and themselves.